The sky tore open with a sudden, blinding flash. Rains, captain of the Earth Defense Scouts, squinted against the light as a small ship plummeted through the atmosphere. It was not a sleek military vessel, but something fragile, almost like it shouldn't survive the journey. Flames licked along its hull, and thick smoke trailed behind, blackening the clouds. His heart raced. He had trained for emergency landings, for alien encounters, but nothing in his experience prepared him for this. The ship slammed into the rocky ground with a deafening crash, sending tremors through the valley. Dust and debris flew in every direction and instinctively shielded his eyes. When the smoke began to clear, he saw a hatch slowly opening. A figure tumbled out, almost weightless, and landed in the dirt with a painful groan. Sprinted forward, adrenaline surging. "Are you alive? Can you hear me?" His voice was hoarse, but he didn't care. He reached out his hand, and the figure, tall, slender, and glowing faintly under the dust, looked at him with eyes that reflected the sky itself, silver and deep. The alien raised a trembling hand. Her voice was soft, broken, but clear enough to understand. "Help me, human, I belong to your protection now." Froze, the words were simple, but their meaning was enormous. Somehow across the vastness of space she had found him, and she trusted him completely. Fear and awe collided inside him. His mind raced. Why her? Why now? Who was hunting her? But even before he could answer, he felt the weight of responsibility pressing down, heavier than any armor he had ever worn. Her breathing was shallow, her body trembling, and could see scars along her arms, burns from the ship's crash. He knelt beside her, gently lifting her into his arms. "Don't worry," he whispered. "I won't let anything happen to you, I promise." She looked at him then, her silver eyes wide, shimmering with tears. "You promise?" she asked. The single word held hope, fear, and desperation all at once, nodded firmly, his chest tightening with emotion. He had faced countless threats in his life, but never had he felt such clarity, such purpose. Protecting her was no longer optional, it was everything. The wind howled around them, carrying the faint scent of ozone and scorched metal. Far in the distance, dark shapes streaked across the sky, fast and relentless. His pulse quickened. He didn't need a scanner to know they were not friendly. Whoever, or whatever, was hunting her was coming, and they were close. He helped her to a nearby vehicle, a rugged hoverbike built for emergencies. She clutched his arm as he started it, her fingers warm and trembling. "We must move," she whispered, obeyed, pressing the controls. The engine roared, and the ground beneath them seemed to shake with every pulse. He didn't look back. The only thing that mattered was her safety, and he would run across 1,000 worlds to ensure it. As they sped through the valley, noticed small details about her. The curve of her neck, the strange iridescence of her skin, the way she seemed to float just slightly above the ground. She was fragile, yes, but there was a quiet strength in her eyes, a fire that refused to die despite the dangers surrounding her. She spoke softly as the wind whipped past, almost to herself. "I thought I would die alone, but you found me." Her words were hesitant, uncertain, but they carried immense trust, felt a lump in his throat. In that moment he realized that humanity was capable of something greater than war or survival. They could inspire hope, they could protect, and right now he was that protector. The first part of their journey had begun, not just through the valley or across the lands, but through the uncharted territory of trust, courage, and destiny. And somewhere beyond the horizon, dark shapes were closing in, unaware that they had just awakened a human's fierce, unshakable will. Tightened his grip on the controls and on her hand. "Hold on," he said firmly, his voice steady. "I'll get you through this. You belong to my protection now, and I will not fail." The alien woman nodded, tears glimmering on her cheeks, her trust placed fully in him. And in that moment, under a sky on fire and a world trembling beneath them, a bond was formed that would change both of their fates forever. The ground trembled beneath them as hoverbike tore through the jagged canyon. Behind them, a formation of dark, angular ships appeared, slicing through the air with precision. Their engines roared like beasts, and each one carried the promise of death. Jaw clenched. He had faced dangerous enemies before, but nothing moved like this. Nothing hunted with such relentless intent. Lyra clung to him, her fingers tight around his arm. They will not stop," she whispered, voice trembling. Her silver eyes, wide with fear, glimmered in the dim light of the canyon. "They will kill me if you fail." His mind raced. The canyon twisted and turned like a labyrinth, but he knew every twist, every slope. He pressed the bike into a sharp dive, dodging a barrage of energy blasts that lit up the rocks behind them. Sparks flew and chunks of stone shattered, but neither of them slowed. "Hold on," shouted over the roar of engines. He banked sharply, narrowly avoiding a missile that exploded against the canyon wall. The heat singed his face, but he didn't dare look back. His focus was unbreakable. Her life depended on it. Lyra's hand trembled against his shoulder. "Why you fight for me?" she asked quietly, her voice barely audible over the wind, stole a glance at her. Fear and hope mingled in her gaze. "Because I promised," he said firmly, "and promises I keep." A strange silence settled between them as they navigated a narrow gorge. Could feel the weight of her trust pressing against him. She was alone in this galaxy, hunted by forces far beyond Earth's understanding, and yet she had chosen him. He realized then that he wasn't just protecting her body. He was guarding her hope, her faith, her life itself. Suddenly, the cliff ahead gave way to a narrow riverbed. Leaned low on the controls, skimming the hoverbike across the shallow water. Sparks flew as metal scraped against jagged stones, and water sprayed over them like silver rain. Lyra laughed softly, a sound like wind chimes, though fear still lingered in her eyes. They are faster than anything I know," she murmured, glancing over her shoulder. Didn't answer. Instead, he focused on the turns, the obstacles, the impossible paths. Every muscle in his body strained, every instinct screamed survival. Hours seemed to pass as they weaved through the canyon, the alien hunters never relenting. Yet, with each sharp turn and calculated dive, felt a surge of pride. Humanity might not have the speed of their enemies or the strength of alien soldiers, but they had ingenuity, courage, and the stubborn refusal to give up. And that was enough. At last, he spotted a cave system hidden behind a waterfall, a temporary sanctuary. He drove straight for it, the bike skimming the wet stones. Lyra pressed close, her body shaking, but her eyes reflected something else now: trust, relief, and a flicker of awe. They slipped inside, the roar of the waterfall masking the sounds of pursuit. Dismounted, checking the bike, his muscles tense, his mind alert. Lyra sank to the floor, her breathing slow but ragged. She looked up at him, silver eyes glistening. You risk everything for me," she said, voice barely above a whisper. Shook his head, kneeling beside her. "I didn't think," he admitted honestly. "I just couldn't let them take you, not when I promised." Her lips curved into a faint, grateful smile. "You are different from anyone I have ever known," she said. That smile, small but genuine, lit something inside him he hadn't realized existed. He wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was her protector, her shield, and perhaps, in some way, her hope. Outside, the alien ships circled the canyon like predators, scanning, searching. And Lyra remained hidden, but they both knew it was only a matter of time before the hunt resumed. Yet in the quiet of the cave, a fragile bond had formed. They had survived the first chase together, and with each heartbeat understood something profound. Courage wasn't just about fighting. It was about standing between danger and the innocent. Lyra rested her head against his shoulder, soft and trembling. "Human, thank you," she whispered, and for the first time felt the weight of her words settle deep in his chest. They were still running, still hunted, but together. And in that togetherness, he found a strength that no enemy could touch, led Lyra deeper into the cave, the roar of the waterfall fatting behind them. The space widened into a natural chamber, walls glinting with mineral streaks that reflected the faint glow of her silver skin. For the first time since the crash, Lyra allowed herself to sit and breathe without trembling. Her eyes scanned the cave, taking in the shadows and the jagged rocks, but also the unexpected safety. This is safe for now," said, settling next to her. He checked the small pack he carried, pulling out food rations and a compact water filter. Lyra watched him curiously, tilting her head like a bird studying a stranger. "You humans, you survive in such fragile worlds?" she asked softly. Her voice carried awe, almost disbelief. Shrugged, "We adapt, we find ways, that's all we can do when the universe seems bigger than us." He offered her some water. She accepted it with a delicate hand, sipping slowly. "And you protect strangers?" she asked. Her eyes were wide, reflecting the flickering light. "I protect those who need it," said simply, meeting her gaze. Doesn't matter where they come from or what they are. Lyra's lips trembled as a flicker of emotion crossed her face. I never thought anyone would help me. Alone I would have. She paused, swallowing hard, tears forming at the corners of her silver eyes, reached over, resting a hand on hers. You're not alone anymore, he said gently. For hours they shared their stories, spoke of Earth, of its people, its struggles, and its small triumphs. Lyra told him of her, a planet of knowledge and beauty now conquered by a ruthless empire. She had been a scholar, a keeper of history and wisdom. Her people had tried to resist, but the Empire's soldiers had hunted them relentlessly. She had escaped, carrying secrets that could save or destroy countless lives. Listened, anger and determination rising in him. They have no right, he said quietly, to chase you, to destroy your world, to take your life, not while I'm here. Lyra looked at him, astonished. You swear? She asked. Yes, said firmly. I swear I will protect you. A quiet settled over the cave. Outside, the wind howled through the canyon, carrying the faint hum of engines from the alien hunters. But inside, the air was still, almost peaceful. For the first time, Lyra allowed herself to relax, leaning against the cave wall, her luminous body soft in the dim light. Moved to the entrance, peering out cautiously. We'll need to move soon, he said. They won't give up. Lyra nodded, her face hardening. She reached into a small compartment of her suit, producing a device unfamiliar to. It pulsed faintly with energy. This can hide us for a while, she explained. Studied it, then we'll use it, he said. Together they rigged the device, masking their presence from sensors and scanners. As they worked, he realized how clever and resourceful she was. She wasn't just fragile. She had survived this far because of intelligence, courage, and a deep will to live. Night fell, painting the canyon in shadows, and Lyra sat together, sharing warmth and quiet conversation. She spoke of her fears, of the Empire, of the knowledge she carried. Spoke of humanity, of hope, and of why he had chosen to protect her despite the danger. When Lyra finally rested her head against his shoulder, felt an unexpected swell of emotion. She trusted him completely, and he had vowed to keep her safe. In that trust, he found purpose, not just as a soldier or a human, but as a guardian. Outside, the alien hunters passed by, unaware of the hidden cave. Inside, a fragile bond, stronger than any weapon or shield. Realized then that courage wasn't measured by victory in battle, but by the willingness to stand between danger and the innocent. Lyra looked up at him, silver eyes glimmering in the darkness. Human, I am afraid, but with you I feel safe, she whispered, tightened his arm around her, his voice calm but firm. And you will always be safe, that's my promise. The night stretched on, but for the first time since her escape, Lyra felt a moment of peace. She had found shelter not just in stone, but in a human heart, and knew, as the wind howled outside and shadows danced along the cave walls, that protecting her would become the greatest mission of his life. Word count, 650. The first rays of sunlight barely touched the canyon when sensed movement outside the cave. His hand instinctively went to his sidearm, a pulse rifle built for precision, not panic. Lyra stirred beside him, eyes half open, sensing the tension. They are close, she whispered, her voice tight with fear. Nodded, I know, stay behind me. The calm in his tone belied the storm of adrenaline in his chest. Outside, the alien soldiers had tracked their trail, their shadows long and menacing across the canyon floor, studied the cave entrance. There was no way to outrun them this time. They would find them before nightfall. He would have to fight. He turned to Lyra. Can you help me? He asked quietly. She hesitated, then nodded, retrieving a small device from her pack. It hummed with energy, its lights pulsing rhythmically. It can disable weapons temporarily, she said. Her silver eyes glimmered with determination. Good, said. We'll need everything we have. The first strike came like a storm. The alien soldiers poured into the canyon, weapons firing energy beams that scorched the rocks and sent sparks flying. Dropped behind a jagged boulder, pulling Lyra close. The device she carried glowed brightly, casting protective waves that short-circuited the enemy's rifles. One by one, their weapons failed, giving the precious seconds he needed to fire back. Lyra's hands moved confidently across the device's controls, adjusting its output, protecting them both. Glanced at her and felt a surge of pride. She was small, fragile-looking, but in her hands lay power he had never imagined. Together, they became a single force, human ingenuity and alien technology working in perfect sync. A soldier lunged from the shadows, aiming directly at Lyra, reacted instantly, tackling him aside. Sparks flew from the enemy weapon as he hit the ground. Lyra reached for his hand, fear flashing in her eyes, but he only shook his head. "Focus on the device," he shouted. "I'll handle this." Hours, or maybe minutes, time blurred, passed in a chaotic ballet of fire and strategy. Rigged traps from the cave debris, rolling boulders, and exposed energy conduits that exploded in brilliant bursts. Lyra guided him to weak points in the soldiers, armor whispering instructions that saved them more than once. They were outnumbered, but not outmatched. Finally, the last soldier fell, sparks sizzling across the rocks as his rifle died. Silence returned, broken only by their ragged breaths and the distant hum of the canyon wind. Sank to the ground, chest heaving. Lyra knelt beside him, her luminous hands hovering near his, unsure whether to touch. You risked everything for me," she said softly, her voice trembling with awe, shook his head. "I promised, and a promise is not something I break." She pressed a hand to his chest, feeling his heartbeat. I have never known such courage in anyone, not in my world, not among those I trusted." Tears shimmered in her silver eyes and realized that in this small cave, in the aftermath of chaos, something powerful had formed between them. Trust, respect, hope. Smiled faintly, brushing dust from her glowing hair. "You're safe now, at least for today," he said, "and I'll make sure the next time there won't be a fight." Lyra nodded, though her body still trembled. You are human, and yet you fight as if the universe itself obeys you." Chuckled softly. "I don't fight because I want to, I fight because someone needs to. Right now, that someone is you." As the sun climbed higher, painting the canyon walls in gold, realized the truth of what he had done. He had not just survived the attack, he had protected her. And protecting her was more than an act of courage. It was proof that humanity, with all its flaws and fragility, could stand as a force of hope in a galaxy filled with darkness. Lyra rested against his shoulder, and for the first time, allowed himself to feel the weight of what had happened. They had survived the first attack, yes, but more importantly, they had survived together. And in that survival, a bond had been forged, stronger than fear, sharper than any weapon, and brighter than any star. Outside, distant engines hummed. The Empire would not forget her, and they would not stop hunting. But inside the cave, a human and an alien woman had found a moment of victory, and for that moment was everything. And Lyra left the canyon at dawn, moving carefully through jagged rocks and narrow passes. The first attack had taught them that running blindly was a mistake. They needed strategy, patience, and trust in each other. Lyra's device hummed softly in her hands, shielding them from distant scanners, while guided their path through abandoned valleys and forgotten ruins. The world around them seemed both beautiful and dangerous. Strange plants with luminescent leaves lit their path at night, while massive, shadowy creatures moved silently in the darkness. Lyra occasionally touched one of the glowing plants, marveling at its colors. "My planet never had this," she said softly, her voice tinged with wonder. Glanced at her, noticing how even in fear she found moments of awe. He realized that courage wasn't only about fighting. It was also about seeing beauty when everything threatened to fall apart. They traveled for days, sleeping in hidden caves, abandoned tunnels, and sometimes under the open sky, always wary of patrols. Each encounter tested their bond. Once a pack of mechanical scavengers cornered them in a ruined city, improvised a trap using rubble and old machinery to disable the machines. Lyra activated her device to short-circuit their systems. Together, they moved like a single organism, human instinct and alien intellect combined. During a quiet night near a calm river, Lyra spoke softly. "I feared I would die alone, no one to save me, no one to care." She looked up at, silver eyes glimmering in the moonlight. "But you give me hope." His heart tightened. He had never been called a hero, and yet here she was, placing her trust in him completely. "I promised," he said simply, "and I never break my word." The journey was not just physical. It tested their emotions, patience, and endurance. Harsh winds, freezing nights, and the constant threat of enemies pressed on them relentlessly, but found himself inspired by Lyra's resilience. She had survived a galaxy-wide empire, loss, and betrayal, yet she still laughed quietly at small things, still marveled at the stars, still trusted him. One evening, after narrowly escaping a patrol of alien soldiers, they sat on a cliff overlooking a glowing valley. Offered Lyra a small meal ration, and they ate in silence. "You fight not because you have to," Lyra said, her voice quiet but steady, "but because you choose to protect." Nodded, touched by her insight. "Sometimes that choice is the only thing that makes us human," he admitted. The bond between them grew stronger with each passing hour. They shared stories of home, of what they missed, and of what they hoped to see again. Lyra told him about her world's libraries, its towering crystal cities, and the knowledge she had sworn to protect. Shared his childhood dreams of exploring the stars and making Earth a place worth saving. At night, when Lyra slept, kept watch, scanning the horizon with a vigilance that never faltered. He realized he no longer thought of her as a stranger or even just a passenger. She had become his responsibility, his companion, his hope. Protecting her was no longer a duty, it was a part of who he had become. Days passed and they reached the edge of a dense forest, paused, scanning for signs of pursuit. "We are close to a safe zone," he whispered, relief mixing with exhaustion. Lyra leaned against him, her hand resting lightly on his arm. "Even if danger comes again," she said softly, "I know you will face it for me." Smiled faintly, feeling a surge of determination. "Always," he promised. "No matter what, I will protect you. We will survive together." And so their journey continued, not just across alien lands, but through a growing trust and an unspoken understanding. That courage, hope, and protection could create something stronger than fear, stronger than enemies, and brighter than the stars themselves. After days of travel, and Lyra finally reached the outskirts of a human settlement, a fortified station tucked on the edge of the galaxy. Lights flickered along the walls, and distant ships hummed as they prepared for defense. It was the first time Lyra had seen so many humans gathered together, a community ready to fight and protect. Relief washed over her face, but remained cautious. "They will help us here," Lyra whispered, hope glimmering in her silver eyes. "Finally safe." Nodded, but his instincts screamed caution. He had learned that trust could be dangerous, even among allies. Yet the promise of shelter, supplies, and reinforcements was too important to ignore. They approached the gate, and the guards nodded, allowing them inside without suspicion. Inside, the station was bustling. Humans and allied species moved in organized chaos, repairing ships and preparing weapons. Felt a rare warmth, a sense of home he hadn't experienced in months. Lyra's eyes widened at the sight. "Your people, they fight and they build together." Smiled faintly, letting himself relax for the first time in days. "We survive, and we protect each other, that's how we last." But danger had a way of hiding in plain sight. In the midst of the hubbub, a human officer approached, offering assistance. "We heard of your arrival," he said smoothly, his voice calm and friendly. "We can provide protection and take you both to safety." Studied him carefully. Something about the man's demeanor didn't feel right, but tired and eager to finally rest, he nodded. "Lead the way," he said. Lyra stayed close, sensing hesitation but trusting his judgment. The officer guided them to a secure hangar where a small transport ship awaited. As they boarded, noticed subtle signs, glances exchanged between the officer and hidden communicators. Too late, he realized the truth. The moment the ship lifted off, alarms blared. The officer's voice was calm, almost mocking. "Sorry, Captain Rains, the Empire's offer was too tempting. We cannot let her leave." His heart pounded, betrayal stung sharper than any weapon. He shoved Lyra to safety behind a bulkhead as the officer drew a concealed blaster. You trusted us," growled, fury igniting within him. "And this is how you repay that trust." Lyra's eyes widened in shock, but she recovered quickly, her voice firm. "Human, we cannot fail now," she said, determination overtaking fear. She activated her device, sending pulses that flickered through the ship, temporarily disabling controls and weapons. Lunged forward, tackling the officer, fighting with every ounce of strength and skill he had honed over years. Sparks flew as systems short-circuited, and alarms screamed in chaotic harmony. The betrayal cut deep, but it also fueled a fire inside him. a promise he would never break, a vow to protect Lyra no matter what. Together, they worked in perfect sync. Combat training and Lyra's knowledge of alien tech made them unstoppable. They dodged attacks, overpowered the traitors, and finally seized control of the ship. The officer lay incapacitated, stunned by their resourcefulness and courage. Breathing heavily, turned to Lyra. She pressed her hand to his chest, feeling the rapid beating of his heart. "Even when others fail, you do not," she whispered. Nodded, his eyes locked on hers. "I promised," he said simply. "I will protect you always." Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, a galaxy of possibilities and dangers. Inside, a fragile trust had been reforged, tested, broken, and now stronger than before. Lyra leaned against him, trembling but resolute. Together, they had survived betrayal, proving that human courage and loyalty could shine brighter than deception and fear. Realized something profound in that moment. No matter how many enemies, no matter how deep the betrayal, humanity's strength lay in the choice to protect, to stand by those who could not defend themselves. And he would carry that truth forward for Lyra, for the galaxy, and for the promise he had sworn. For the first time in what felt like forever, Lyra smiled fully, trusting that even in darkness, humans could be the light. And holding her hand, knew that their journey had only just begun, but together nothing could break them. The stars stretched endlessly around them as piloted the transport ship toward the edge of the galaxy. For the first time in weeks, there was no immediate threat. No ships chasing them, no weapons firing, no alarms blaring. Only the quiet hum of the engine and the soft glow of Lyra's silver eyes beside him. She turned to him, her luminous face reflecting hope and vulnerability. I am yours now," she said softly. "Not because you demand it, but because you protect, because you care. I belong to your protection." His chest tightened. Her words carried weight he had never felt before. She trusted him completely, giving herself to his care not out of obligation, but out of faith. "And I will not fail," he replied steadily, his hand brushing hers. "No matter what comes, I will protect you, always." Lyra's eyes glimmered, tears forming at the corners. "Even if the galaxy fights against us?" she asked, voice trembling. "Even then," said firmly. "We face it together. You are not alone, Lyra, not ever." The ship slipped into a hidden sector where humans and allied species were building a new defense line. Here, Lyra would finally be safe, but knew her safety was not just walls or weapons. It was the bond between them, the promise that no matter the danger, he would stand between her and any threat. They landed quietly, stepping onto solid ground for the first time in what felt like forever. Lyra's feet touched the floor lightly, almost hesitant, as if afraid the world might shatter beneath her. Followed, scanning the perimeter. Everything was calm, almost peaceful. Lyra looked up at him, her voice soft but resolute. "I feared I would never see peace again. I feared I would only run, only hide, only die alone." She paused, letting her words sink. "But you gave me hope. You gave me protection and courage." Placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "It wasn't just me," he said. "It's humanity. We fight, we survive, we protect, and sometimes that makes all the difference." They walked through the camp together, humans and alien allies moving around them in organized harmony. Saw the admiration in the eyes of the soldiers and engineers, but he barely noticed it. His focus was on Lyra. She had survived a galaxy-wide empire, betrayal, and relentless pursuit, and yet here she stood, alive and trusting because of him and humanity. At night, they stood outside under the vast sky, countless stars sparkling like scattered diamonds. Lyra leaned against, her silver hair catching the light. "I once thought courage was only in warriors, in armies, but I see now, courage is in hearts that refuse to abandon those in need," she said softly. Smiled, feeling the weight of his journey, the battles, and the promises he had kept. "Courage is in everyone who chooses to protect the innocent," he replied. "And I choose you. I will always choose you." Lyra's tears shimmered, but she smiled fully, the first smile free of fear in weeks. "Then I belong to you," she whispered, her voice carrying both relief and trust. Wrapped his arm around her, feeling the warmth of her presence, the bond they had forged through danger, trust, and unwavering courage. "And I will protect you," he said, firm and unwavering. Through storms, through darkness, through any enemy, you will never face anything alone again. As they watched the stars together, realized humanity's true strength wasn't in weapons, fleets, or numbers. It was in the courage to stand for those who could not stand for themselves. In that promise, in that quiet determination, he had become more than a soldier. He had become a symbol of hope for Lyra, and perhaps for the galaxy itself. Lyra rested her head on his shoulder, breathing easier than she had in months. Tightened his hold, feeling her trust and hope as a living thing between them. Together they faced the galaxy, not as predator and prey, but as protector and protected, as human and alien, as two beings bound by courage, loyalty, and an unshakable promise. The stars seemed to shine brighter that night, and somewhere deep inside, knew this was only the beginning.